Okay, so we're in the last section of chapter 5. We're going to talk about some special right triangles. So yesterday we learned Pythagorean theorem, and that was for right triangles when they gave you 2 out of the 3 sides. So maybe they gave you 3 and 4 and they asked you for that remaining third side. Now the stuff that we're going to move into today, they might only give you one side. So we might have triangles that look like this. And we're going to have to know where to go from there. So we can't use Pythagorean theorem. Where do we go? So the first way is, the first special right triangle is a 45, 45, 90. And the reason it's called a 45, 45, 90 is because of the angles. You've got a 45-degree angle, a 45-degree angle, and a 90-degree angle. Notice 2 of the angles are the same, 45, 45. So that means 2 of your sides are going to be the same. And if you look down here, this is actually your formula. I know it's a really weird way of writing a formula, but the x root 2 is actually the formula for a 45, 45, 90. So let's see what we're doing with this formula. So here's a good example. Notice they only gave us one side, so we can't really use Pythagorean theorem. So then we say, hey, is it one of our special right triangles? Well, I've got a 45 and I've got a 90. If you subtract those from 180, you do find that this one's also a 45. So we know it's a 45, 45, 90. What I always say is that formula, mark it on your picture. That should be your first step. Mark your x root 2. So across from your 45 is x, across from your 45 is x, and your hypotenuse is your x root 2. So you always want to mark the formula first. I'm going to change colors so it stands out. So here, it tells you what x is. X is 3, which means x is 3. That side's done. Which means x root 2 is 3 root 2. So everywhere there's an x, we know we plug in 3. Let's try another one. Let's mark our stuff. So we have x root 2. And then again, you have to go where it gives you information. So here is where it gave me information. We know that x root 2 equals 2 root 2. It's a little bit easier here because it just said x equals 3, and we were done. Here you got to do a little bit of math. We're going to divide both sides by the square root of 2. And you get x equals 2, which means x equals 2, and x equals 2. So your 45, 45 is 2 root 2. And those are your missing side lengths. Now they're going to ask you for a missing side length. So they might ask you for AB, and you would say the answer was 3. They might ask you for AC. The answer is 3 root 2. All right, let's make it a little bit harder. So example 3, we're going to do the same thing. Now notice there's no angle measures here. But like we learned a couple weeks ago, if the angles are the same, the sides are the same, this is a 45, 45. So they could mark congruent sides, they could mark an isosceles. If it's an isosceles right triangle, it's a 45, 45, 90. So let's mark our formula, x, and our hypotenuse is x root 2. And here's our x. So this tells me x equals 9 root 2, which means x equals 9 root 2. Here's one of my answers. X root 2, so x was 9 root 2. So that's x times the square root of 2. X times the square root of 2. X times the square root of 2. So we have root 2 times root 2 is the square root of 4. The square root of 4 is 2. 9 times 2 is 18. And again, I just wanted to show you all the work so that way you have it in your notes. But your hypotenuse is going to be 18. So AC is 9 root 2, AB is 9 root 2, and BC is 18. Going hand in hand with this problem is the next one, and this is probably like a worst case scenario. You see the 45, 45, so we're going to mark our formula, x, 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 root 2. And we look at our equation. Unfortunately, they did not give us x. So they gave us x root 2 is equal to 16. And we've got to solve. So let's divide both sides by the square root of 2 to get x alone. So we got x equals 16 divided by the square root of 2. Now, if that was the only thing we had to do, this problem would be way easier. But unfortunately, you cannot have a square root in the denominator. So we call this rationalizing the denominator. It's getting rid of a square root. So in order to get rid of this square root, we've got to multiply it by itself. Square root of 2. Well, whatever we do to the bottom, we're going to do to the top as well. So this is what we do to rationalize. So up top we have 16 times the square root of 2. And in the bottom we have root 2 times root 2, which is the square root of 4. Now I'm going to come down here to simplify. So we have 16 root 2 over square root of 4, which is 2. And then 16 divided by 2 is 8 root 2. So we have 16 root 2's divided by 2 gives me 8 root 2's. And that's my value of x. X equals 8 root 2, which means this side is 8 root 2. And this side is 8 root 2. And we're done. So our side lengths, our legs are 8 root 2, and our hypotenuse is 16. So those are all examples of 45, 45, 90s. There's also a 30, 60, 90. And again, based on angles, we have a 30, a 60, and a 90. Now, we know the hypotenuse, right? That's our hypotenuse, is across from the 90. And instead of just saying legs, because there are 2 legs, they call one the short leg and one the long leg. So across from the 30, that smaller angle is going to be your smaller side, so they call that the short leg. Across from the 30. And that's always going to be marked with an X. And then across from 60, they call that the long leg. Oops. Whereas when we were in a 45, 45, it was just 2 legs and a hypotenuse, because the legs were the same length. But again, this is your formula. I know it looks weird. And we're always going to start by marking our formula in the picture. So let's start by marking our formula. So we know this is a 30, 60, 90. So we're going to use our formula. Across from the 30 is your short leg. That's x. Across from the 60 is your long leg. That is x root 3. And across from the 90 is your hypotenuse. That is 2x. So all I did, oops, wrong way. I marked my formula. I went to the 30, traveled across, gave it an x. Went to the 60, traveled across, x root 3. Hypotenuse, 2x. So that's what I marked in my picture. Well, good news. We know x equals 5. So x root 3 is 5 root 3. 2 times x is 2 times 5, which is 10. Oop. There we go. So my short leg is 5. That's what they gave us. My long leg is 5 root 3. And my hypotenuse is 10. Let's do another one. Again, mark your formula in the picture. Go to your 30, travel across. That's your x. Go to your 60, travel across. That's your x root 3. Go to your 90, travel across. That's your 2x. And I know this looks really intimidating, but there's your formula. 2x has to equal 12 root 3. All right, well, we want x, so we're going to divide both sides by 2. So we have x equals 12 divided by 2 is 6 root 3. Now be careful because you're not done. We just found the value of x here. So x is 6 root 3. So x is 6 root 3. Well, that one's done. X root 3, so this is x times the square root of 3. So x was 6 root 3 times the square root of 3. Right? X root 3. X times the square root of 3. X times the square root of 3. So we have root 3 times root 3 is the square root of 9. Square root of 9 is 3. 6 times 3 is 18. So our hypotenuse was 12 root 3. Our short leg was 6 root 3. And our long leg was 18. So depending on what the problem asks for. I think this is our last one. Yep. Last but not least. Again, mark your pieces. Across from the 30 is x. Across from the 90 is 2x. And our long leg is x root 3. Again, this is one of those worst case scenarios. So this is probably as hard as it gets. So we know x root 3 equals 27. Set up whatever it says. X root 3 equals 27. So we're going to get x alone, divide both sides by the square root of 3. And again, if I could stop here, this wouldn't be such a bad problem. But unfortunately, you do have to rationalize. You cannot have a square root in the denominator. So remember, to get rid of that square root, we multiply it by itself. But we have to do it to the top and the bottom. So rationalize that denominator. So up top, we have 27 times the square root of 3. And in the bottom, we have root 3 times root 3, which is root 9. And I'm showing all my steps just because these are notes, and I want you to have everything. So here, the square root of 9 is 3. And then simplify if you can. So 27 root 3s divided by 3 gives me 9 root 3s. Think about what you just found. You just found the x in your formula. So x is 9 root 3, which means my x is 9 root 3. And 2 times x is 2 times 9 root 3. And I always say roots with roots, whole numbers with whole numbers. 2 times 9 root 3 makes 18 root 3. Whole numbers with whole numbers. And there's my 2 missing, oops. Well, that wasn't supposed to happen. But there's my 2 missing pieces. There we go. So if they asked me my short leg, 9 root 3. If they asked for the hypotenuse, 18 root 3. If they asked for the long leg, 27. They already gave it to me. All right, so that's what you're doing. I expect to see the work. I expect to see you mark your formula, x root 3, or sorry, x root 2, or x, 2x, x root 3 for 30/60s. Show all your work and tell me if you have any issues.